Sagadawa Tashitale. Today is Sagadawa, and I had the opportunity to give the BBC. So I was thinking a little bit about how I might talk about Sagadawa, and maybe I could show pictures from what it was like being at Draponozaling during Sagadawa. When I went most summers, my trip to India overlapped with Sagadawa, the Tibetan observance of Vesak. And so the main temple building of Draponozaling would be covered in lights. There would be special chanting. And so thinking about Sagadawa, I started thinking about the smell of the incense and the taste of the chai and all of the food I enjoyed there. But remembering sense pleasures is not a good way to celebrate Sagadawa. That's just attachment. And if I want to really recognize what the Buddha gave us in observance of the Buddha's birth and enlightenment and parinirvana, I should be looking at the antidotes to attachment and not just dwelling in attachment. So what I want to talk about, in celebration of Sagadawa, is the first truth. So we could call it the truth of dukkha. And I don't typically translate it as suffering. I often just like to say dukkha. We can say unsatisfactoriness, but then there's unsatisfactorinesses and it gets a little complicated. So I like just saying dukkha, the Sanskrit word. And so why should we think about dukkha, unsatisfactoriness? It helps us reduce our attachment. We start to have much more reasonable expectations of things because we see that they're not going to satisfy us. They're not going to be satisfactory. And as we look at more and more things, not just maybe the chai and the smell of the incense, but really every single thing that we experience in cyclic existence, our aggregates themselves, we see that all of cyclic existence is dukkha, that there is nothing satisfactory about the experience we have. And so this is something that comes up in the middle scope of the Lam Rim, where we're looking really at individual liberation. And so wanting to really be free from this cycle, this merry-go-round that is always going to be unsatisfactory. We might think briefly that this is great, the lights are so pretty, and my senses are so happy right now. But then the next day is not Sagadawa, and that has all ended. So this was something I was meditating on recently in the middle scope. There's a couple of different ways of looking at what is unsatisfactory in our lives. And different lists, I like the lists. And one of them is one could say the 8 sufferings of human beings, or the 8 experiences that human beings have that are unsatisfactory. Now, the first 4 are a little bit simpler in a way: birth, aging, sickness, and death. Now, sometimes we have to work with the birth part to understand why that is unpleasant and unsatisfactory. But at least aging, sickness, and death is a little more obvious to us that that's something we would like to be free from, that we don't necessarily want. But then I was looking at the second half of the list, and that's what I would like to focus on. And in particular, there are days where I think my life is going pretty well. There are days where, I sit down and be like, okay, yeah, cyclic existence, it's unsatisfactory. And it's like, today was pretty good. So how then do I get my mind past that and really generate that desire to be free from samsara? Because I see that it is just going to lead to suffering. So as I was trying to find a way to do this meditation that really connected with me and motivated me in the right direction, what I found was it helped to reflect on how the vegetable garden is dukkha. Because I rather like the vegetable garden, and it's not as clear of a simple sense pleasure as perhaps pretty lights and chai are. It's still an object of attachment and something that I can look at and see is not going to be pleasing, is not going to be satisfactory. So of these 8 experiences of human beings, again, the first 4, birth, aging, sickness, and death. The 5th is that we always experience separation from what we like, from what we enjoy, from what we find pleasurable. So is this true for the vegetable garden? Absolutely. There are these wonderful little plants, these sprouts coming up, the chard that we can harvest and have a nice lunch from. And then I go out and I see that it has been eaten by insects and cute little rabbits, perhaps, and chipmunks, and that those plants that I found so enjoyable, sometimes they're just gone. And there's nothing I can do about that. That is the nature of it. The garden might be going beautifully for much of the summer, and then the weather here is such that it gets very hot, things dry up, perhaps we start experiencing water shortages and can't water anymore, and that lovely garden becomes a dry patch of dirt. And then even beyond that, even now when things are still going pretty well, there are all of these other things I need to do. There are other items on my to-do list. I can't just spend all of my time in the garden. And that can be painful. I want to be out there, but there's spreadsheets to work on. And so that really clearly shows me the attachment, but also that notion that I have to separate from it. At some point, I have to go in and work on the computer and do something else. So yes, I like it, and always there is that separation. The sixth item on the list is that we meet with what we don't like, with phenomena or experiences that are displeasing to us, that we have aversion to, that are suffering. And again, this is true for the vegetable garden. While I might focus on the pleasant aspects, when I go out there and see that caterpillars have been eating the basil, I then carefully pick off the caterpillars and move them to somewhere else where they will hopefully have a good lunch that doesn't interfere with our lunch. Again, not so pleasing. I try to say mantras to the caterpillars, but it's not something I enjoy. Or as I need to go into the garden shed and there's wasps making a nest in there, again, this is something that I find displeasing, but is just going to be the nature of going through the day. And then as I'm going through the garden shed and finding the mouse nests and the chipmunk droppings, and this is unpleasant. But again, just going to be the nature of trying to be out there in nature. So yes, being in the garden is going to lead to meeting experiences I don't like. The seventh item is, again, kind of a variation on these, that we don't get what we want sometimes, regardless of how hard we try. And very much the garden is an example of this. I keep trying to grow peppers. Last year, some bell peppers. This year, some hot peppers. And this is maybe not a place where one can grow peppers. We'll see. And so as much as I started them early and have cheered them on and tried to find ways to give them enough heat and move them from one windowsill to another windowsill and, protected them at night, we might not get any peppers from those plants. Or we might get one and it will be sad and disappointing. Similarly, I wanted to start some kale and broccoli sprouts this year, and again, babied them and moved them from one windowsill to the next, and I think all except 2 died. I don't know why. And then even just weeding, there's this creeping wood sorrel that comes up and is covering the garden, and myself and others and guests, we pull it out and we're trying to defeat it and get it out of there so it doesn't strangle all of the plants that we do want, and yet it's going to keep coming back. Even though we spend hours and hours pulling it out, there's going to just continuing to be these weeds. So yes, I don't get what I want, this perfect, pristine garden, regardless of how hard I try. And that is the nature of samsara. It's never going to be this phenomenal thing that I am attached to in my mind, because that is not how it exists. Then the 8th item on this list of what is unsatisfactory about human existence is that our aggregates are subject to karma and afflictions. So this comes back kind of like those first 4 of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Not to an external object, but to me. And even these 3, I'm talking about the garden, but fundamentally it is about the afflictions, my attachment, my aversion, my ignorance. That is my experience here in samsara, as long as I am an ordinary being who hasn't yet overcome the afflictions. And it's interesting then to think about karma in that concrete way of thinking about the garden and my experience in it. Part of my karma was to be born in this body, which is very susceptible to sunburn, and I seemingly have the habit of not remembering to put out on sunscreen, or at least not being mindful of it when I go out there to be in the garden for a while. It was also my karma to be born in this time and place which is subject to climate change, such that, yes, there's these extreme weather conditions and water shortages that are impacting the garden. So I can see karma play out in all of the little experiences of pleasure and pain that I experience when I'm in the garden, the sore muscles after pulling lots of weeds, but also seeing those big picture conditions as well. So today and every day, as we celebrate the Buddha's teachings, let's remember that even when we do have a nice lunch waiting for us or other special celebrations, that fundamentally it's the Buddha's teachings we should come back to. And at least today I find it quite helpful to think about that first truth, that teaching on dukkha, that what we're experiencing here in cyclic existence is always going to be unsatisfactory. And that as we reflect on this, we can see that yes, staying in samsara for the sake of growing vegetables is really not worth it. But beyond just that, ideally getting to that point of wanting to be free from samsara myself, recognizing that all the other sentient beings, both the humans in this room and the caterpillars and the roly-polies and chipmunks and mice and all of the other critters and eating the garden, that they're suffering too, especially in the lower realm of having that animal rebirth. So reflecting on that, I can have more compassion for them as I carefully move them off the plants and can then really work towards that realization of bodhicitta, to want to attain Buddhahood, to help all sentient beings be liberated from samsara. But as the Lamrim tells us, we really need to start with wanting that for ourselves as well, to not see samsara as a very pleasant garden of sense pleasure in itself.